Hey guys, this is Anthony with Yoster's Kitchen. Today we're going to be making some delicious pork carnitas. Let me show you how to get started. For this video, we're going to need 2 tablespoons of olive oil, 3 to 4 chipotles in adobo sauce. You can get this in the can or the jar. 1 1/4 cups of beef broth, 1 1/2 tablespoons of cumin, 1 tablespoon of oregano, a teaspoon of salt, and a teaspoon of black pepper. I like to grind this fresh, but you can use this stuff out of the can as well. We're going to need the juice of 2 limes, a red onion, half a head of garlic, and a few bay leaves. It also helps to have some Mexican hot sauce. I personally like Tapatio. And then finally, we're going to need about 3 tablespoons of paprika and 1 tablespoon of smoked paprika. For this recipe, I usually like to use a 5 to 6 pound pork shoulder roast or pork butt roast. These are really great because they're usually less than $1 a pound, and sometimes you can even get them on sale for less than 50 cents a pound. For today's recipe, I'm actually going to be doubling our spice mixture because I'm using a 10-pound roast because I have something special cooked up for you guys that I'll be premiering later in the week. So I'm going to need some extra pork roast for that. Next up, I'm going to go ahead and combine all of my dry spices so that we can make the rub for this pork roast. I'm going to combine our paprika and smoked paprika, our dried oregano, our cumin, and our salt and pepper. And like I said before, if my measurements look a little bit different than yours, I am doubling up my spice recipe because I'm using a bigger pork roast than I normally would. I'm going to go ahead and just mix this, make sure it's good and incorporated. All that pepper in, all the salt and paprika. It should look something like this. Next, I'm going to go ahead and chop our onion and our garlic. We're going to use this to both stuff the roast and prepare our marinade. I'm just going to cut it into quarters. Next, I'm going to take our garlic. Garlic's pretty easy. It's a little messy. I want about half of this head. I'm going to pull out some nice looking cloves. Now, you still have this outer layer around each clove of garlic. And the easiest way I find is take a knife, press down on it. You'll hear it pop. And you can usually just get that out of here. Let's do that for the rest of them. I'm going to actually cut these into smaller pieces because we're going to be inserting them into several places on the roast itself. So, and if you're not a fan of garlic, I'm willing to bet that you've used a lot of that canned minced garlic, and while fresh garlic is really, really fragrant, it brings a completely different flavor to the plate. I think you're really going to enjoy it. Finally, we're going to go ahead and cut our limes. I like to cut them just right down the middle. I can give them a good squeeze. For our marinade, we're going to go ahead and start by putting our onions into the blender. Then I'm going to follow up with our canned chipotle peppers and adobo sauce. Try to get all that sauce in there, that's the good stuff. We're going to add our 1.5 cups of beef broth. You may need to eyeball this. It looks like my blender is going to wind up taking everything that it needs, but if you need some more space in your blender, you can leave some of this out and just put it into the crock pot later. I'm going to add our olive oil and give a good squeeze of these limes that we cut up just a minute ago. Whenever you're making a marinade, you want to make sure to have a good mixture of acid and oil that's going to help to permeate the meat while it's cooking. I'm going to blend this until it's all good and blended together. But we're going to go ahead and set this aside and get prepared on rubbing and stuffing our roast. Okay guys, so preparing the roast gets kind of messy, and you want to go ahead and have everything ready to go. I'm going to go ahead and use Tapatio hot sauce today, but really use your favorite. If you like Tabasco, use Tabasco. You like Louisiana, use Louisiana. Nobody ever uses Old Bay, but if you wanted to, you could. And so what we're going to do is we're going to make several incisions all along the roast, just poking through with this paring knife. We're going to take some cloves of our garlic and we're going to shove them in as best we can. And sometimes you have to go back in with your knife and make a deeper hole. And in each little incision where I put some garlic, we're just going to put a little bit of hot sauce. Now, if you'd like to skip this step, and again, I don't really recommend it, you can use some minced garlic and just go ahead and mince that up into the marinade itself. Now, once we've gone ahead and stuffed our roast and we've got hot sauce and garlic everywhere, we're going to take our pre-made spice mixture. I'm going to go with about half of it. We're really just going to generously rub it in. All right, before we put our roast in, we're going to go ahead and just put a thin layer of our marinade here on the bottom. Then we're going to go ahead and just see if this is going to fit. Now I'm just going to pour the marinade over the sides and top. I'm going to throw in just a few bay leaves, close the lid. I'm going to set it on low and we'll check back on it every couple of hours. Okay, our roast has been cooking for about 9 hours now. Again, I had a bigger 10-pound roast. Your smaller one may not need to go this long. I'm going to go ahead and see what it's looking like. You can see this liquid's really bubbling up in here. Some of that meat's already starting to break apart, so I think that's in a good spot. Let's see just how easy that all pulls apart. I should be able to, if I can find the bone, should just be able to pull that bone straight out, which is perfect. So what that means is I'm going to go ahead and cut this off. I'm going to go ahead and transfer this over to a metal baking sheet. Now I'm going to let it cool for about 30 minutes, 45 minutes before I start to shred it. But you can see this, even just grabbing it with my tongs, it's completely falling apart. It's way too hot to touch right now. I want you to see just how great that looks. Look at that bone. Your dog, you've got a dog, is going to love that bone. And if you don't have a dog, save it for your soup pot. Alright, this is all cooled off enough now. You can go ahead and see that it's easy to touch. And what I'm going to do is just start pulling and separating my meat. And I like to feel for any loose pieces of fat because I'll show a trick about that later, but I also don't like to eat it. So I'm just going to go pull this pork. It's nice and warm still. And set that aside in this bowl for dinner tonight. Alright, now that our pork is shredded, we're going to go ahead and set that aside and reserve some of the drippings to pour over it before we heat it back up and serve it with dinner. Making this recipe and other Mexican food keeps me connected to my family in Texas's Rio Grande Valley. I love this dish because it's so versatile. You can serve it into burritos, over salads, you can use it as a filling for flautas or tamales, you can even get creative and serve it up as a po' boy or French dip. My personal favorite way to eat pork carnitas, though, is with freshly warmed corn tortillas topped with red cabbage, red onion, a bit of sour cream or guacamole, and a squeeze of lime. Keep an eye out for more of my Mexican and Cajun-inspired meals, and please like and subscribe for updates on our next videos. This is Anthony with the Oster's Kitchen, signing off.